Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive shape floating in the darkness of space. His salvage ship Lucky Strike had been searching this empty system for 3 days, looking for anything valuable enough to make the long journey worthwhile. What they found was beyond his wildest dreams. The alien ship was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers long and shaped like a giant spear. Its dark metal hull was scarred with blast marks and holes, but it was still the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. No human had ever found a ship this advanced before. "Captain, I'm reading zero power signatures," said Lisa Bennett from her science station. She was the best xenoarchaeologist in human space, and Jake was lucky to have her on his crew. "The ship appears to be completely dead." Jake's heart raced with excitement. A dead alien ship meant salvage rights, and salvage rights meant more money than his crew had ever dreamed of. But it also meant danger. Nobody knew what kind of weapons or traps might still be active aboard an alien vessel. "Carl, can you get us a docking connection?" Jake asked his chief engineer. Carl Rodriguez studied his instruments carefully. He was a careful man who never took unnecessary risks. "I think so, Captain. The ship's hull design suggests they use similar atmospheric standards to us. I can probably rig something up." The docking process took 2 hours. Carl had to cut through several layers of alien metal and bypass security systems that nobody understood. When they finally got inside, Jake's team found themselves in a corridor that stretched beyond their flashlight beams. The ship was dark and cold, but the air was breathable. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the silence. Everything was built for creatures slightly taller than humans with longer arms and different proportions. The walls were covered with symbols that looked like flowing water frozen in metal. "These markings," Lisa whispered, running her fingers over the strange writing. "I've seen similar patterns in ruins on Kepler 442c. This ship belongs to the Xanthari Empire." Jake felt his blood turn cold. Every human knew about the Xanthari, though few had ever seen them. They were one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, known for conquering entire star systems without mercy. If this was their ship, it meant technology beyond anything humans could imagine. They moved deeper into the vessel, their lights revealing rooms full of strange equipment and control panels. Everything was built from materials that seemed to shift color in their flashlight beams. The technology was so advanced that it looked like magic. Carl found what appeared to be an engineering section and began working on the power systems. He was sweating despite the cold air, muttering to himself as he tried to understand alien technology that operated on principles he had never seen before. "I think I can get some basic power online," he finally announced. "But I have no idea what will happen when I do." "Do it," Jake ordered. They needed to see what this ship really contained. The lights came on gradually, revealing the true scale of the vessel. The corridors were vast, designed for a military crew of thousands. Everything was built for war. From the reinforced bulkheads to the weapon storage rooms they discovered on every level. But it was Lisa who made the most important discovery. In what appeared to be the ship's data center, she found computer terminals that were still partially functional. Working carefully with translation software, she began to piece together the ship's history. "Jake, you need to see this," she called, her voice trembling with excitement and horror. The main screen displayed star charts unlike anything humans had ever created. They showed not just star positions, but detailed information about every planet, military base, and strategic resource across 3 entire galactic arms. It was an intelligence goldmine that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. But the next files Lisa accessed made Jake's stomach turn. They were mission records showing the ship's last assignment in human space 50 years ago. The Xanthari had come to test their new weapons, and they had chosen a human colony world as their target. The recording showed New Terra from orbit, a beautiful blue and green world where 2.3 million humans had built farms and cities. Jake watched in horror as Xanthari plasma weapons turned the entire planet into a burning wasteland in less than an hour. Men, women, and children were vaporized without warning, without mercy, without any reason except to test new weapons. The Xanthari classified it as a minor field exercise. They had murdered millions of humans just to see how their guns worked. Jake's hands shook with rage as he watched the recordings. His own grandmother had lived on New Terra. She had sent him letters about the beautiful sunsets and the crops growing in the rich soil. Now he knew why those letters had stopped coming. The ship was damaged in a battle near the galactic core, Lisa explained, her voice barely above a whisper. They had to abandon it here while retreating. They never came back. Carl appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Captain, I found something else. This ship isn't just damaged. It's a complete weapons platform. The armor can withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. The shields can deflect energy beams that would cut through our best warships like paper. And the weapons—" He paused, struggling to find words. The weapons could destroy an entire fleet. Jake stared at the alien controls surrounding him. This ship represented power beyond human understanding. With it, humanity could defend itself against any threat. More importantly, they could make the Zinthari pay for what they had done to New Terra. "We're taking this ship home," Jake announced. "Alert Earth Command. Tell them we've found something that will change everything." Lisa looked worried. "Jake, are you sure? This technology is incredibly dangerous. We barely understand how it works." "The Zinthari used it to murder our people," Jake replied, his voice hard as steel. "It's time they learned what it feels like to be on the receiving end." As his crew began the complex process of preparing the alien vessel for the journey home, Jake stood on what had once been the Zinthari command bridge. The stars looked different now. They no longer represented the vast unknown that made humans feel small and helpless. Now they represented opportunity. The Zinthari had left behind the means of their own destruction, and humanity was going to use it. The age of human vengeance was about to begin. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison's discovery, and the alien warship now hung in the shadows of Sanctuary Station, hidden deep in the asteroid belt. The massive vessel was surrounded by human ships, construction platforms, and work crews who labored around the clock to unlock its secrets. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the main observation deck, watching hundreds of technicians crawl over the alien hull like ants. She had been chosen to lead Project Retribution, the most classified operation in human history. The pressure was enormous. Earth's leaders expected miracles, but miracles took time. "Admiral, we have another problem," announced Commander Rick Davis as he entered the observation deck. He looked exhausted. His uniform wrinkled from spending days inside the alien ship's engineering sections. "The quantum processors are rejecting our interface attempts again," Kate sighed deeply. Rick was the best technical officer in the fleet, but even he struggled with technology that operated on principles human science barely understood. The Zinthari had built their ship using quantum matrices instead of normal computers. Their weapons channeled exotic matter through crystal arrays that seemed to violate the laws of physics. "What about Dr. Foster's neural interface project?" Kate asked. "That's our best hope," Rick admitted. "Dr. Amy Foster thinks she can modify the Zinthari control systems to work with human brain patterns. But the early tests are dangerous. 2 volunteers are still in the medical bay with severe neural trauma." Kate walked closer to the observation window, studying the alien ship that had become humanity's obsession. Every day brought new discoveries and new challenges. The vessel was like a puzzle with a million pieces, each one more complex than the last. Down in the ship's medical bay, Dr. Amy Foster carefully monitored her latest test subject. Marine Lieutenant Brad Cooper lay unconscious on the examination table, his head connected to a modified Zinthari neural interface by dozens of thin cables. "His brain activity is stabilizing," reported Nurse Kelly Wright, watching the medical displays with concern. "But the quantum resonance is still too strong for extended exposure." Amy frowned at the readings. The Zinthari had designed their ship controls for minds that thought differently than humans. Their brains processed information in quantum states, allowing them to control incredibly complex systems with thought alone. Adapting that technology for human use was like teaching a fish to breathe air. "Reduce the interface strength by another 15%, Amy ordered. "We need to find the threshold where humans can control the systems without suffering permanent brain damage." In another part of the station, Colonel Steve Parker watched his Marines practice combat techniques using recovered Zinthari equipment. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, but they required special training to use safely. Energy rifles that could punch through tank armor also had a tendency to explode if handled incorrectly. "Remember, these weapons respond to bioelectric fields," Steve shouted to his trainees. "Think of them as extensions of your nervous system, not just tools." The Zinthari designed them to bond with their users. Private Danny Collins raised his hand. "Sir, what happens if we think the wrong thing while holding one?" "You die," Steve replied bluntly. "And probably take half the squad with you. That's why we practice until muscle memory takes over. Your conscious mind can't be trusted with this kind of power." The real breakthrough came when engineer Nancy Williams finally managed to activate the ship's main power core. She had been working for weeks to understand the alien fusion reactors, which didn't just generate energy but actually manipulated space and time around the ship. Power levels are climbing steadily, Nancy reported to Admiral Sullivan over the communication system. The core is reaching critical mass, but the containment fields are holding. Kate felt her heart racing as she watched energy readings that defied explanation. The Xanthari power core generated more electricity than Earth's entire planetary grid, but it did so by bending reality itself. Space around the ship began to shimmer as localized physics distortions came online. All stations, prepare for full system activation, Kate ordered. The moment the ship's systems came fully online, every human on Sanctuary Station felt it. The air itself seemed to vibrate with power. Gravity fluctuated randomly as the ship's engines tested themselves. Emergency alarms wailed as sensors detected energy signatures that shouldn't exist. But they had done it. For the first time in 50 years, the alien warship was alive. The celebration was short-lived. 3 hours after the successful activation, explosions rocked the engineering section. Security teams rushed to investigate, only to find that someone had planted bombs throughout the ship's most critical systems. "We have saboteurs on the station," reported Security Chief Roger Bryant over the emergency channel. Someone tried to destroy the power core. Jake Morrison, who had been retained as a special advisor to the project, led the investigation. Working with a team of military investigators, he quickly identified the saboteurs as members of the Peace Coalition, a political group that opposed human military expansion. "They believe humanity isn't ready for this kind of power," Jake explained to Admiral Sullivan after the arrests were made. "They think we'll become just as bad as the Xanthari if we use their weapons." Kate's expression was grim. "What do you think, Captain?" Jake stared at the alien ship through the observation window. The massive vessel represented incredible power, but also incredible responsibility. In the wrong hands, it could indeed make humanity into the monsters their enemies claimed they were. "I think about New Terra," Jake said quietly. "I think about 2 million innocent people who died for no reason except that they were weak. Power doesn't corrupt people, Admiral. It reveals what they already are inside." The sabotage attempt had failed, but it served as a warning. Not everyone wanted humanity to have its vengeance against the Xanthari. Some people preferred to remain victims rather than become warriors. But for those who had lost family and friends to alien cruelty, there was no choice. The ship would be completed, and humanity would take its place among the galaxy's great powers. As the days passed, more systems came online. The ship's weapons were tested in empty space, vaporizing asteroids with casual ease. The shields were activated, creating energy barriers that could stop anything short of a black hole. The engines were brought to life, warping space around the ship in ways that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. Finally, Admiral Sullivan made the announcement that everyone had been waiting for. Standing before the assembled crews, she spoke words that would echo through history. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present humanity's first interstellar warship. We will call her the Redeemer, because she represents our chance to redeem the innocent lives lost to alien aggression." The massive ship slowly turned in space, its hull gleaming with energy fields and weapon ports. It was no longer a dead relic of an alien empire. It was humanity's sword, forged from the ashes of their enemies' mistakes. The resurrection was complete. Now came the hard part, learning to wield the power they had claimed. The Redeemer launched from Sanctuary Station on a cold Tuesday morning, carrying 800 volunteers who had sworn to avenge humanity's dead. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the command bridge, watching the stars shift as the massive ship's engines bent space around them. After months of preparation, the hunt was finally beginning. Their first target was a Xanthari listening post in the Vega system, chosen because it was isolated and lightly defended. The attack would serve two purposes: testing the ship's weapons in real combat and announcing to the galaxy that humanity was no longer defenseless. "Approaching the target zone," reported Navigator Tom Anderson from his station. The ship's sensors could detect objects across entire star systems, far beyond anything human technology had achieved before. "I'm reading 12 Xanthari vessels at the listening post," announced Commander Beth Adams, the ship's intelligence officer. "Mostly light cruisers and patrol ships. They're not expecting trouble." Jake studied the tactical display showing enemy positions. The Xanthari had built their listening post on a small moon, using it to monitor human shipping routes and military communications. For 50 years, they had spied on humanity from this hidden base, gathering intelligence that could be used for future attacks. Not anymore. Battle stations, Jake ordered. All crews to combat positions. The bridge transformed as battle alerts sounded throughout the ship. Weapon systems came online with a hum that vibrated through the deck plates. Shield generators created shimmering energy barriers around the hull. The Redeemer became what it was designed to be, a weapon of war. "Weapons ready, Admiral," reported Chief Tactical Officer Helen Carter. She had spent months learning to operate the alien fire control systems, practicing until she could target multiple enemies simultaneously with thought-controlled interfaces. "Fire," Jake commanded. The Redeemer's main guns spoke with the voice of ancient fury. Beams of pure energy, each one containing enough power to level a city, reached across space in milliseconds. The Xanthari listening post simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even atoms remained. The enemy patrol ships tried to flee, but they were centuries behind the Redeemer's technology. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed with casual efficiency. The entire battle lasted less than 3 minutes. "Target destroyed," Helen reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. No survivors detected. Jake felt a cold satisfaction as he watched the empty space where the Xanthari base had been. Somewhere in that expanding cloud of particles were the aliens who had monitored human worlds, planning future attacks against defenseless colonies. "Send a message on all Xanthari military frequencies," Jake ordered. "Tell them that humanity remembers New Terra. Tell them we're coming for all of them." The message spread through galactic communication networks within hours. On Xanthari military bases across 3 spiral arms, commanders received reports that seemed impossible. A human ship had attacked one of their installations and completely destroyed it. The humans, who had been dismissed as a primitive nuisance, suddenly possessed technology that matched their own. The second target was more ambitious, a major supply depot that protected 12 star systems. The Xanthari had built it in the middle of a nebula, using the stellar gases to hide their massive stockpiles of weapons and equipment. 67 enemy ships defending the depot, Beth reported as the Redeemer approached the nebula, including 3 heavy battlecruisers. Dr. Gary Thompson monitored the neural interface systems from the medical bay. Several crew members were already showing signs of strain from operating alien technology, but they pushed forward anyway. "I'm seeing elevated stress patterns in all interface operators," he warned. "Extended combat exposure could cause permanent brain damage." "How long can they hold?" Jake asked. "Maybe an hour at maximum efficiency," Gary replied. "After that, we risk losing people." Jake considered the information. The supply depot was too important to abandon, but he couldn't sacrifice his crew for a single victory. They needed those people for the long campaign ahead. "We go in fast and hit them hard," Jake decided. "Helen, prepare the main battery for concentrated fire. I want that depot destroyed in the first strike." The battle began as soon as the Redeemer emerged from hyperspace. The Xanthari defenders opened fire immediately, filling space with energy beams and plasma torpedoes. But their weapons struck the ship's shields and simply disappeared, absorbed by technology they had once created but no longer understood. The Redeemer returned fire with devastating effect. Each shot from its main guns destroyed an entire enemy ship. The alien battle cruisers, proud vessels that had conquered dozens of worlds, were torn apart by their own advanced weapons turned against them. But the strain on the human crew was enormous. 3 officers collapsed at their stations as the neural interfaces overloaded their nervous systems. Others fought through severe headaches and disorientation, determined to complete their mission despite the pain. "Depot shields are failing," Helen reported through gritted teeth. Blood trickled from her nose as the weapon's interface pushed her brain beyond safe limits. "Fire everything," Jake ordered. The supply depot exploded in a chain reaction that lit up the entire nebula. Weapons, fuel, and equipment worth billions of credits were destroyed in seconds. The explosion was so massive that it could be seen from neighboring star systems. As medical teams treated the injured crew members, Jake stood in the observation deck watching the debris field expand. They had won another victory, but the cost was becoming clear. Human minds weren't designed to operate Xanthari technology for extended periods. We need to develop better interfaces, Dr. Thompson warned as he treated the wounded officers, or find ways to reduce the neural load. We can't keep fighting like this without losing people. The Zenthari response was swift and decisive. Within days, they mobilized their full military might for the first time in decades. Ancient defense treaties were activated, calling upon allied species to join the hunt for the human ship. The galaxy's communication networks buzzed with military traffic as fleets began moving toward human space. Commander Adams intercepted increasingly desperate Zenthari military communications. "They're terrified," she reported to Jake. "They keep referring to us as the human demons and the darkness that hunts." They've never faced an enemy using their own technology against them. But the aliens' fear translated into action. Intelligence reports confirmed that a massive Zenthari fleet was assembling near their homeworld, preparing for a decisive strike against Earth itself. The hunt for vengeance had triggered something much larger, a war for humanity's survival. "They've found Earth's coordinates," Beth announced during a staff meeting. "Long-range sensors detect at least 50 enemy ships moving toward our home system." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. His quest for justice had put every human life at risk. The Zenthari were no longer content to ignore humanity or conduct limited raids. They wanted to end the human threat permanently. "How long before they reach Earth?" Jake asked. 2 weeks at their current speed," Beth replied. Jake stared at the star charts displayed on the conference room screen. Earth's defenses, even with captured alien technology, couldn't withstand an assault by 50 advanced warships. The planet would be destroyed just like New Terra, and this time it would be his fault, unless the Redeemer could somehow stop them first. "Plot a course for the Zenthari assembly point," Jake ordered. "If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." As the ship changed course toward the heart of enemy space, Jake realized that their simple mission of vengeance had become something much more complex. They were no longer just hunting the aliens who had wronged humanity. They were fighting for their species' right to exist among the stars. The hunt was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The war had grown beyond anything Admiral Jake Morrison had imagined when he first discovered the alien warship. Intelligence reports flooded in from across the galaxy. 47 Zenthari warships had assembled near their homeworld, each one powerful enough to crack a planet's surface. Worse yet, 3 other alien species had joined the Zenthari cause, convinced that humanity posed a threat to galactic stability. Jake stood in the Redeemer's war room, studying holographic displays that showed the massive enemy fleet moving toward Earth. His home planet's defenses, even reinforced with captured alien technology, couldn't hope to survive such an overwhelming assault. "Estimated time until they reach Earth?" Jake asked Commander Beth Adams. 10 days at their current speed," Beth replied grimly. "Our long-range sensors show they're not stopping to engage our outer colonies. This is a direct strike meant to end humanity permanently." Lieutenant Commander Paul Brooks entered the war room, carrying a datapad filled with reconnaissance information. He had been leading dangerous scouting missions deep into Zenthari space, gathering intelligence that could save humanity from extinction. "Admiral, I found something," Paul announced. "The Zenthari fleet is being coordinated from a central command facility called the Eternal Dominion. It's a massive space fortress orbiting their homeworld." Jake studied the intelligence photos Paul had gathered. The fortress was enormous, possibly the largest artificial structure in known space. Its weapons could destroy entire fleets, and its shields were powerful enough to withstand direct hits from stellar-class weapons. "If we can destroy that fortress," Paul continued, "the Zenthari fleet loses its coordination. Without central command, their ships become just individual vessels that we can defeat one by one. And how exactly do we destroy something that's protected by the most heavily defended system in the galaxy?" Jake asked. Paul spread additional photos across the table. "That's the problem, sir. The fortress is surrounded by 300 defensive platforms, each one armed with weapons that could destroy the Redeemer. Getting close enough to attack would be suicide." As they discussed impossible strategies, reports arrived from Earth's remaining colonies. The Zenthari advance forces had begun systematic bombardments, destroying human settlements that had taken decades to build. Millions of colonists fled in overcrowded transport ships, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs. Dr. Gary Thompson entered the war room with a medical report that made their situation even worse. "Admiral, we're losing crew members to neural exhaustion. The alien interfaces are burning out human minds faster than we anticipated. I've got 15 officers in the medical bay with permanent brain damage. Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him like a physical force. Every decision he made cost human lives, but the alternative was the extinction of their entire species. How many crew members can still operate the ship's systems? Jake asked. Maybe 200 at full efficiency, Gary replied. The rest need time to recover, or they'll suffer irreversible neural trauma. In the engineering section, Victor Price worked frantically with Dr. Donna Clark's research team to find any advantage they could use against the Zenthari fleet. They had been analyzing captured enemy technology for weeks, looking for weaknesses that human ingenuity could exploit. I think I found something, Victor announced as he called up complex energy diagrams on his computer screen. The Zenthari shield systems all operate on the same harmonic frequency. It's like they're all tuned to the same radio station. Donna studied the data with growing excitement. If we could generate a counter-harmonic frequency, we might be able to disrupt their shields completely. But we'd need to modify our weapons to produce that exact energy signature. How long would that take? Victor asked. 3 days if we work around the clock, Donna replied. But there's no guarantee it will work. We're making educated guesses about alien technology we barely understand. As Victor and Donna began their modifications, Jake received the message he had been dreading. Earth Command transmitted a desperate plea from the home planet, showing orbital bombardment beginning over major cities. Billions of civilians huddled in underground shelters while Zenthari forces established firing positions in space. The transmission ended with Admiral Catherine Lewis, Jake's former commander, speaking directly to him. Jake, we know what you're trying to do out there. We believe in your mission, but if you have any way to help us, we need it now. Earth is dying. Jake stared at the communication screen long after the message ended. Every instinct told him to turn the Redeemer around and race home to defend his planet. But returning to Earth meant abandoning their only chance to end the war decisively. What are your orders, Admiral? Commander Adams asked quietly. Jake gathered his senior officers in the war room. The question before them was simple but terrible. Save Earth and lose the war, or sacrifice their homeworld for a chance at ultimate victory. I won't lie to you, Jake began. If we return to Earth, we might save some lives in the short term. But the Zenthari will rebuild their fleet and come back stronger. Our children and grandchildren will face the same threat, only worse. Chief Tactical Officer Helen Carter spoke first. Sir, if we can destroy their command center, we cripple their entire military machine. It's the only way to ensure they can never threaten humanity again. Dr. Thompson nodded reluctantly. The neural interface problem is getting worse, but we still have enough functional crew to complete one major operation. After that, he shrugged. One by one, the officers voted to continue toward the Zenthari homeworld. It was the hardest decision any of them had ever made, knowing they were essentially abandoning Earth to pursue a desperate gamble. As the Redeemer changed course deeper into enemy space, Jake made an announcement to the entire crew over the ship's communication system. By now you all know what's happening to Earth, he said. You know that we're flying away from our families and friends while they face the enemy alone. Some of you might think we're cowards for not going back to fight. Jake paused, looking out at the stars that surrounded them. But we're not running away. We're carrying the hopes of every human who ever lived. If we fail, our species dies. If we succeed, we ensure that no alien force will ever again threaten human worlds. The crew listened in absolute silence as their admiral continued. The Zenthari think they can break us by threatening our home. They're wrong. We are the children of Earth, but we are no longer bound by its gravity. We carry humanity with us wherever we go, and we will plant it among alien stars like seeds in fertile ground. As Jake finished his speech, the ship's sensors detected the edge of Zenthari space. Ahead lay the most heavily defended system in the known galaxy, protected by technology that could destroy fleets and weapons that could shatter planets. Behind them, Earth burned under alien guns while its people waited for salvation that might never come. The Redeemer sailed on into the darkness, carrying the last hope of humanity toward an impossible battle against overwhelming odds. Jake knew that in 10 days either the human species would be extinct, or the galaxy would learn to fear the people of Earth. There was no middle ground left. Only victory or death remained. The Zenthari home system blazed with defensive fire as the Redeemer burst through the outer sensor nets. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the tactical display fill with enemy contacts. 300 defensive platforms, 50 patrol fleets, and the massive Eternal Dominion fortress that controlled it all. All weapons charged and ready, reported Chief Tactical Officer Helen Carter. Her face was pale from neural strain, but her hands remained steady on the alien fire controls. Shield harmonics are configured for Victor's frequency disruption. Take us in, Jake ordered. The Redeemer accelerated toward the inner system, its hull gleaming with energy fields that bent space around the ship. Enemy fire filled the vacuum with deadly light, but the modified shields held against weapons that should have destroyed any human vessel. Victor Price's harmonic frequency modification worked perfectly. As Xanthari plasma beams struck the ship's shields, the defensive barriers absorbed the energy and converted it into power for their own weapons. The aliens found themselves strengthening the very enemy they tried to destroy. First defensive line is breaking apart, announced Navigator Tom Anderson. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Dr. Gary Thompson's voice crackled over the communication system from the medical bay. We're losing neural interface operators faster than expected. The strain of combat is burning out human minds. Jake pushed the concern aside. They had come too far to stop now. Captain Frank Johnson, prepare your boarding teams. We need to capture some of those command ships to learn about the fortress defenses. Frank Johnson led 50 Marines in modified Xanthari assault craft, using the aliens' own technology to penetrate their defenses. The boarding action was brutal and swift. Human soldiers, trained in zero-gravity combat and armed with alien weapons, proved superior to Xanthari troops who had grown soft from decades of easy victories. We've captured the command ship Stellar Fang, Frank reported over the radio. Their computers contain the fortress shield frequencies and weapon rotation patterns. Dr. Susan Green analyzed the captured data while the Redeemer fought through the second defensive line. Jake, I found something important. The fortress power core has a critical flaw. If we can overload it with precisely timed energy pulses, the entire structure will tear itself apart. How close do we need to get? Jake asked. Within 2 kilometers of the fortress surface, Susan replied, and we need to maintain that position for at least 10 minutes while I work. Jake studied the tactical display. 2 kilometers meant flying directly into the fortress's strongest defenses, where hundreds of weapons could focus fire on the Redeemer. Even with their superior shields, surviving that kind of concentrated assault would be nearly impossible. All hands prepare for final assault, Jake announced throughout the ship. We're going to fly straight into the heart of their defenses and end this war. The Redeemer charged toward the Eternal Dominion like a spear thrown by an angry god. The fortress responded with every weapon it possessed, filling space with energy beams that could cut through planets. The ship's shields flared and sparked under the incredible assault, but held together through sheer alien engineering. Shield strength down to 60%, Helen reported as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. We're taking massive damage to the outer hull. Keep us steady, Jake ordered. Susan, how much longer? 8 more minutes, Dr. Green replied from the engineering section. The power core is responding to the energy pulses, but I need time to build up the resonance cascade. Around them, the battle raged with unprecedented fury. The Redeemer's weapons systematically destroyed defensive platforms, while Xanthari reinforcements poured in from across the system. The space around the fortress became a graveyard of burning ships and shattered metal. Lieutenant Commander Paul Brooks coordinated the ship's point defense systems, shooting down missiles and fighters that swarmed around them like angry insects. They're throwing everything they have at us, he reported. I don't think they understand what we're trying to do. They understand, Jake replied grimly. They know we're here to destroy their empire. With 3 minutes remaining, disaster struck. A massive energy beam from the fortress punched through the Redeemer's weakened shields and tore through the engineering section. Emergency alarms screamed as atmosphere vented into space. Direct hit to engineering, reported Damage Control Chief Larry Mitchell. We've lost main power to the neural interfaces. Helen struggled with manual controls that fought her every command. Without the neural interfaces, operating Xanthari technology became nearly impossible for human minds. I'm losing weapons control, she announced desperately. Jake made a decision that would haunt him forever. All crew members with neural interface training, report to backup control stations immediately. I don't care about the medical risks. Dr. Thompson's voice crackled over the communication system. Jake, you can't ask them to do that. The neural strain will kill them. If we fail here, we're all dead anyway, Jake replied. 20 volunteers rushed to the backup control stations, knowing they were sacrificing their lives for humanity's future. One by one, they plugged themselves into alien neural interfaces that immediately began burning out their nervous systems. Weapons back online, Helen reported, blood streaming from her nose as the neural interface overloaded her brain. I can hold it for maybe 2 more minutes. That's all we need, Dr. Green announced from engineering. Power core resonance is reaching critical levels. The fortress is about to tear itself apart. The Eternal Dominion began to shake as energy cascades ripped through its internal systems. Explosions bloomed across its massive hull as power conduits overloaded and weapon batteries exploded. The space fortress, pride of the Zenthari Empire, was destroying itself from within. All ships retreat to safe distance, Jake ordered. This is going to be big. The Redeemer pulled back just as the fortress power core reached critical mass. The explosion was visible from the outer system, a ball of nuclear fire that briefly outshone the local star. The Eternal Dominion, along with everything within 50 kilometers, simply ceased to exist. As the explosion faded, something remarkable happened. Across the Zenthari home system, enemy ships began powering down their weapons. Without the fortress to coordinate their actions, the alien fleet fell into chaos and confusion. We're receiving surrender signals from the remaining Zenthari forces, Commander Adams reported with amazement. They're asking for terms. But Jake's vengeance was not complete. Using the intelligence gathered from captured ships, the Redeemer systematically hunted down every Zenthari military installation across 3 galactic arms. Over the following months, they reduced the once mighty empire to scattered refugees fleeing to uncharted space. The war ended not with humanity's extinction, but with the complete collapse of Zenthari military power. The species that had casually murdered millions of humans found themselves begging other galactic civilizations for protection from the human demons that hunted them across space. Jake returned to Earth 6 months later to find a world scarred but not broken. The orbital bombardment had been stopped when the Zenthari fleet received word of their command center's destruction. Billions of humans had survived in underground shelters, and they emerged to find their species transformed from victims into one of the galaxy's great powers. The Redeemer became the flagship of humanity's new interstellar navy, proof that no alien force could destroy the children of Earth. Ships built using captured Zenthari technology spread across the galaxy, carrying human colonists to worlds that had once seemed impossibly distant. Standing on the Redeemer's bridge, Jake looked out at stars that no longer held mystery and fear. Humanity had paid a terrible price for its place among the galactic powers, but they had earned something that could never be taken away: respect. The Zenthari had left behind a broken warship, thinking it was just another piece of space debris. Instead, they had given humanity the keys to the galaxy and the power to claim their destiny among the stars. Jake smiled as he watched human ships departing for distant worlds. The age of human expansion had begun, built on the foundation of alien arrogance and fueled by the determination of a species that refused to accept defeat. Vengeance was complete, but humanity's greatest adventures were just beginning.